Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the broadcast. My name is Justus, and I can't thank you enough for being here today. Truly can't thank you enough for joining public video enemy number one, it appears. Ever since my 1-week suspension, I can barely get a video off the ground. The guy used to get 15 to 20,000 clicks, now can't clear 1,000 for multiple hours. It's amazing how that works, but isn't going to make me quit, of course. I work very hard on, depending on which platform I'm on, to adhere to the rules as they are, but I guess something gave me a little faith last night. 15-minute speech. Globalist elites infuriated. I put it in quotes because that was the term used. Italy's new leader, Giorgia Meloni, if you don't know about her, presented a 15-minute speech that ignited the unthinkable, resulting in her ultimate election. Unless you hear this speech, you can't put into context who she is and what she represents. In all reality, there's two questions. Some on the left calling her a fascist, a follower of Mussolini. There's some historical basis behind that. I'll get to that shortly. But others would declare it the ultimate speech of freedom. So I want you to listen to the sound bites. We're going to rip through them rather quickly and then come up with your own opinions, because that's what you're supposed to be free to do. Presentation of fact to formulate one's opinion. A fairly simple concept, but it appears nowadays is radical thought. Aggravated? Doesn't even begin to describe what I'm feeling, but that doesn't distract from the fact of what I'm about to bring you. A few requests first. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, I certainly hope you will. I put up a membership platform. That's your means of supporting me to bring you new broadcasts, because when the click count goes down, there isn't much there to work with anymore. But that doesn't mean we're ever going to surrender. We're never going to stop. Of course not. We're going to continue to broadcast and push through to find the right formula that, well, at least here they find agreeable. Second broadcast I'm going to do at restrictedrepublic.com, exclusive content that no one can afford to miss. It's an in-depth study of a doctor who promoted the mRNA COVID vaccine, and we're going to go through a little bit of history and then some current events. Eye-opening would be an understatement. So if you haven't been to restrictedrepublic.com yet, please use discount code FREEDOM. Lisa Haven and I, we go ahead and broadcast there daily because there's only so long you can spend here, so we want to make sure we continue to bring you all the news that matters. So that's why we brought you to the platform, to house all the news we broadcast and all the sources we broadcast them at, combined with no commercials and no interruptions. Right now, use discount code FREEDOM at monthly checkout. Promise you it will be the best decision, the best click you make today. RestrictedRepublic.com. But now let's get back to this broadcast. So as many of you are aware, Italy has a new leader, Giorgia Meloni. To be more specific, overwhelming victory. I am Giorgia. I am a woman. I'm a mother. I'm Italian. I'm Christian. And boy, has she caught ridicule because of those statements. A leader of the right-wing Brothers of Italian Party, as Andy Nogo states, is set to become the country's first female prime minister. Congratulations. A huge victory. Much to the anger of Italian left following the election today. Her party's motto is God, family, and country. And she says it's a priority to stop illegal immigration. Many taking exception with those statements, but it goes to speak to a much larger issue, a much larger narrative, to opposing agendas. And she does a very concise job of working her way through those. 15 minutes is all it took her. You'll see here on The Intercept, it's a girl, fascist. Very direct statement. A long tradition of white womanhood being central to fascism. This on The Atlantic, the return of fascism in Italy. With Giorgia Meloni's party leading in polls ahead of Sunday's election, the Italian far right is edging closer to power. And a lot didn't want to see that happen. But here is the 15-minute speech she gave once upon a time, not too long ago in 2020, that will go to frame in everything she stands for. And I want you at the end of this presentation to tell me what your thoughts are. Is this about fascism or is it about freedom? So let's move through these clips and you decide.
Our main enemy today is the globalist drift of those who view identity in all its forms to be an evil to be overcome, and constantly acts to shift real power away from the people to supranational entities headed by supposedly enlightened elites.
Oh, Giorgia, you know you can't say those words. You know you can't say that, but she did. And she got quite the reaction. You saw those articles I showed you, but do you believe that is a movement occurring around the world? That's the first question. The first question we're going to frame in. That resulted again in many articles, just like this one. Italy set to make Giorgia Meloni first far-right leader since Mussolini. Drawing many comparisons in the articles. Now she was part of a group, and we can go down in the article just to put something together on this. Meloni is very much a creation of her biggest supporters, Steve Bannon, they list in the article, and echoes some of the world's most extreme leaders, such as Trump and Viktor Orban. Meloni cut her political chops as a member of the fascist Italian social movement formed by Mussolini supporters after his deposition and death. I want to give you the context of why some are declaring this, making that comparison. But I want to judge her now by her words, and let's listen to a few more of those.
Because we did not fight against and defeat communism in order to replace it with a new internationalist regime, but to permit independent nation states once again to defend the freedom, identity, and sovereignty of their peoples.
I told you, radical thought. We the people is what she is presenting there against supranational powers that don't serve in the interest of we the people. But I'm going to let her go on. We're going to continue to run through multiple clips here as she now kind of starts very soon to transition into John Paul II and Ronald Reagan, of all people, also citing Trump in this speech, but that's not the clip we're going to focus on.
Whether the false Democrats like it or not, national conservatives in every latitude are actually the only real Democrats, because it is only by defending the nation state that we defend the political sovereignty that belongs to the citizens of that state.
Our forefathers would be proud of that statement, wouldn't they? It's only by defense of our Constitution, to make sure it is always upheld, that we the people remain we the people. If the power is not with we the people, it could only be with a very select few elites that view themselves as, unfortunately, and we've read, superior to us. And if you've listened to some of the recent UN speeches, one of which I'm going to show you here shortly, you'll understand that is exactly what they state every day concerning censorship, concerning gun rights, concerning just about every element of our life that they say in so many words that the people can't possibly know what's best for them. But we do. But I'll let Giorgia continue on a little bit further.
John Paul II, the Patriot Pope, knew perfectly well that nations and the fact of belonging to a people sharing the same historical memory were the bedrock of the freedom of every man. There is no Europe without Christianity.
Once again, very dangerous words in today's global climate. The defense of Christianity, which you'll see why now many taking exceptions with her. But it was, at that point in time, under John Paul II, considered the nation's identity, and removal of that identity would remove the nation's identity. Fairly simple concept, and by removal of that identity, it would need to be replaced with something different. John Paul II did not agree with that.
In the case of immigration, he considered that the right to immigrate had to be preceded first and foremost by a right not to immigrate.
A huge statement that many, many, many people disagree with. You have a right to immigrate. She does not refute that. She is against illegal immigration. Are you? Well, if you were in this definition, and by many of the headlines, you too would be called a fascist. So far, she believes in we the people and the rights of we the people. She believes in preserving the national identity. Just think about how many of our monuments now have been torn down, as our own nation's identity has been defaced, removed, destroyed, blotted from the history books. Well, the books themselves have been adjusted now, haven't they? Removing a national identity, which would automatically have to be backfilled with something else. I know, radical thought so far, huh? But I'll continue forward with her speech.
Popular sovereignty, another great enemy of the globalist elites. I was very impressed by the metaphor Reagan used to describe the conservative movement as a three-legged stool. Without any one of these three legs, the stool will collapse. And the three legs are defense, fiscal, social.
A three-legged stool. She starts with defense. Defense of a nation, the ability for a nation to defend itself. If you look at what's happening with our U.S. military through multiple agendas now, it appears that our ability to defend our country is being eroded. Our finances are being taken overseas. We're taking quick exits out of places we should not have exited quickly, leaving many of our assets behind. And so again, it resonates with what many would deem as accurate statement. But she moves forward.
As a patriotic soul, today would be called a sovereignist, means the defense of national interest and popular sovereignty.
Respect for our veterans, respect for our history, respect for those that gave their lives to protect this great nation, not radical thought, normalcy in thought. I guess it just depends on who you ask. And I think it's each of our duties now to help, especially the younger generation, keep things very black and white. No one condones violence. As a matter of fact, she goes on in her speech and says that although they agree, and I'll put this very simply, with an arrow, not for the damage it can do, but for the defense it could provide. She goes into much philosophy and then gets into some stone-cold hard facts.
The second leg is economic freedom, which means also a just relationship between government and taxpayers. A great lesson of conservative thought is that an oppressive tax system not only limits free enterprise, production, consumption, but it also destroys the covenant between the state and citizens.
Now that is the easiest concept for most to understand, but yet we're hiring 85,000 new IRS agents. The ultimate oppressive taxation state, of which she is very much in disagreement with, because a government that controls that much money and that much power will go to restrict free enterprise, the polar opposite of what this great United States stands for. Many will live in fear, unfortunately, even though they're doing nothing wrong, because it's impossible, almost impossible, to understand all the bylaws and stipulations put into the tax code. The everyday American would need 2 encyclopedias to even begin to understand it. And it is that lack of understanding that creates fear. And with fear will be less spending. That's unfortunate. But again, 85,000 IRS agents would be the opposite of what this new powerful leader is discussing.
And the third leg is the social soul, to protect religious and moral values, the noblest purpose of all political action.
The soul of a nation, what a radical concept. Wokeism has gone to erode, by many's opinion, the soul of this great nation. And many agendas like it continue to do the same. Well, she stands in contrast to that thought and that belief, but rather in the interest of what her nation always represented, and wants to bring it back to those fundamentals.
The three concepts of today's meeting: God, freedom, nation, or in the Italian formula to which I am very attached, God, homeland, and family.
You can't discuss those three at the same time. You know that you cannot do that. God, family, and country, God, homeland, and family, depending on how you word it right now. And if you look at some of the write-ups, would make her a nationalist, an extremist, an ultranationalist. Those definitions have been warped and defined to fit a different agenda. That doesn't mean anybody believes in violence, because most people don't. Most people want peaceful, bureaucratic solutions. They want their representatives to represent them. That's it. That's plain and simple. This should not be incendiary thought. And that is not either what she is presenting. She is just discussing the preservation of her nation's identity. And the voters responded to this in overwhelming fashion, which would tell you the majority of people agree with that simplistic thought. Not this grayed up, convoluted, distorted reality that's being created for us every day.
Free indeed, but fenced in within a predetermined enclosure, because if you dare try to clamber over it, you are censored by the new Menlo Park high priests of the only school of thought allowed.
I cannot tell you enough how much that statement resonates with me. Because if you don't fall within the school of thought, the prevailing school of thought, as she said, I think she said, developed by these new high priests, then you're an outcast. There's nothing radical about that. You're always supposed to be able to have your own thoughts and air them as I do here, based on facts, evidence, reference points, in a very even keel fashion so people can make their own determination. It's when you present those too well, too concise, too accurately, well, that's when you bump into problems nowadays. But maybe we should just follow the leadership of New Zealand's Prime Minister, who's now calling for a global censorship system because they understand better. And they can't possibly pass through many of the things they want to pass through if you're there to maybe present an opposite thought process, opposing information. Truly, that's what she believes and what she presented to the UN.
Successfully end a war if people are led to believe the reason for its existence is not only legal but noble? How do you tackle climate change if people do not believe it exists? How do you ensure the human rights of others are upheld when they are subjected to hateful and dangerous rhetoric and ideology?
Boy, that sounds familiar, doesn't it? You see, it is what many would consider global elites' talking points. That a very few self-appointed leaders understand more than you and I do. That was New Zealand's Prime Minister Ardern, by the way. I know many of you are familiar with her. We've presented many clips of what is moving forward to be what is two opposing movements now. So I'll finish again with Giorgia Meloni in this 2020 speech, by the way, February 22nd of 2020 to be more specific, that goes to illustrate exactly what she stands for, what she represents.
Our opponents, they paint us as obtuse nationalists, in love with autarky, rejecting any dialogue, ready to wage war on the slyest pretext. But that is not the case.
See, she even used the term ultranationalists. That's what her opponents deem her as. And I showed you, they deem her as a fascist, an opponent. But she just said there's no interest in waging wars, but rather to bring her nation back to its national identity, the identity of her nation, free from the restrictions of global elites and their financial institutions, assuring freedom on those three pillars she brought up: God, homeland, and family.
I think we have to focus above all on the world of high finance and the great economic powers that are imposing their will on the nation states. As I say it, the message "our homeland first" means reaffirming the primacy of the real economy over the financial economy and popular sovereignty over supranational entities with no democratic legitimacy.
Unelected representatives making decisions for we the people over our elected representatives in the interests of supranational power and financial stability for, as she terms it, the globalist elites. So now that that presentation has passed on just the sound bites from a 15-minute speech, I'll leave a link below. I invite you to watch it from start to finish because there's much more information contained within that can help you even make a better decision, a better judgment. And what's your thoughts? Was that speech about or coming from a fascist, as many in the media have termed her, or is that coming from someone interested in the freedom of her nation? You even heard the Make America Great Again, except in her case, Make Italy Great Again, talking points coming out. My friends, this is one of the most important speeches you'll ever listen to because you're going to sit back like I did and nod your head. And I don't know why they're wrapping it. I should say, I do know why they wrap it in conservatism. But these definitions all need to be thrown away. The political parties as they stand and the definitions that they stand for have been so warped and skewed that they really have no substance anymore. It's either, in her opinion, those who stand for the preservation of the nation, the freedom of the nation, the economic freedom of a nation based on its founding principles, or those who stand in the interest of a more globalized structure of finance, of freedom, of interests. And those are the two battles we're now faced with. Those are the two polar opposite positions. And it's why you're seeing so much happening around the world, because many are standing up for one side or the other. Natural course of history. But you just need to put it very black and white to understand what that actual and what the spirit of that battle is to understand. Is it a battle of good versus evil? Is it a battle of just conflicting interest? Well, it depends on what you believe. And so I look forward to seeing that in your comments below. I love you all. Can't thank you enough for being here today. I'm going to go prepare the second video now. Can't wait. If you're at Restricted Republic, you're going to bump over. If not, you're going to get over to Restricted Republic today and you're going to sign up, because I know I could be that direct with you, because once you're there, the only thing you're going to say to me is, thank you. Thank you, Justice, for letting me know about this platform, because it's everything we've been looking for. RestrictedRepublic.com. I love you all. Until next time, Godspeed and God bless. Justus Knight, signing out.